Big questions over the Chinese surveillance balloon. It's floating high over Montana. Mola Lenghi is on the scene in Billings with the latest. Good morning, Mola.
Good morning, George. National security officials say they are monitoring this Chinese surveillance balloon that traveled from Alaska through Montana here and is still on the move. Pentagon officials telling ABC News they decided not to shoot the aircraft down, but they are leaving all options on the table.
This morning, a suspected Chinese surveillance balloon hovering over the northern United States for days.
The United States government has detected and is tracking a high-altitude surveillance balloon that is over the continental United States right now.
The balloon seen here, flying over Billings, Montana, where it forced a ground stop at the city's airport, halting all commercial and general aviation flights in order to clear the airspace. It's roughly the size of 3 buses, with a technology bay attached beneath it, believed to be carrying high-resolution cameras, according to a senior U.S. official. Sources describe it as an aircraft designed to travel in a purposeful path, one that includes a number of sensitive U.S. sites.
These are balloons that can be used for surveillance, for Earth observation, but they can also be used for military purposes. In this case, perhaps the Chinese were looking to collect high-fidelity imagery of sensitive U.S. sites, where they may have been intercepting communications. But they also could have been testing U.S. air defenses.
A senior defense official saying they are confident the balloon was sent by the Chinese government. And this isn't the first instance this has happened in recent years.
Once the balloon was detected, the U.S. government acted immediately to protect against the collection of sensitive information.
This morning, the Chinese government cautioning against what they describe as hype, claiming they're still gathering facts. The Pentagon, now closely tracking the balloon, says it currently poses no physical threat to civilians, commercial aviation, or U.S. military assets. Still, on Wednesday, defense officials say, as a precaution, the U.S. Air Force mobilizing F-22 fighter jets in case the order was made to shoot down the balloon. The contrails seen here in this image.
It may have been possible for the U.S. Air Force to shoot this balloon down, but that also raises a risk. And that risk is if the missile misses, or even if the missile hits the balloon, it could send hot shrapnel down on civilian areas anywhere in Montana.
Well, U.S. officials say the path the balloon appears to be taking flies it directly over some sensitive U.S. sites, including one of the nation's 3 nuclear missile silo facilities at Malmstrom Air Force Base here in Montana, George.
Okay, Mola, thanks. Let's get more on the administration response from senior White House correspondent Mary Bruce. Good morning, Mary.
George, good morning. Well, the White House this morning is tracking this very closely, but they are also urging calm, stressing that right now there is no immediate threat. But I can tell you behind the scenes, the president's team has been scrambling to present him with options, including possible military action to take down this aircraft. And while the defense secretary has argued that's not necessary at this point, we are told they are leaving all options on the table. Meanwhile, lawmakers are already demanding answers and action. Montana Republican Ryan Zinke tweeting simply, "Shoot it down." All of this, of course, comes as we have seen rising tension between the U.S. and China, and as Secretary of State Antony Blinken is expected to visit China in the coming days, the first such visit by a sitting U.S. Secretary of State in over 4 years. That trip this morning now in question, as the appearance of this balloon is sure to only escalate tension further.
Colonel Layton, let's look at this balloon that Oren's reporting on. It's the size of 3 buses. This is enormous. As Oren points out, China has satellites. They're watching the United States all the time. So what is this thing about? What is China doing here?
So one of the big things, Aaron, that China could be doing with this is they could be scooping up signals intelligence. In other words, they're looking at our cell phone traffic, looking at our radio traffic. They're looking at the government's command and control networks. And as Oren pointed out, we have a ballistic missile base, a series of ballistic missile silos in Montana and in North Dakota and Wyoming. So these are the kinds of things that they could be looking at. Also, they're probably looking at the strategic bomber base bases that we have in the Dakotas. So this is something that gives them a chance to perhaps augment their satellite coverage, and it's definitely a system that could be collecting a lot of data.
So that's what you're saying, is that there is more data and specific data, signals intelligence, cell phones, that they wouldn't be able to get other ways that they could get from this. And just to make the point clear, you're talking about the strategic bomber bases, nuclear facilities. This was seen over Billings, Montana. And as Oren says, there's not a lot of people there. And that's part of the reason why they are so strategically important to the United States, to our nuclear arsenal, and to the strategic bomber base. I mean, this location is hugely significant.
It is, and it's part of what we call our nuclear triad, which is made up of bombers, missiles, and submarines. So 2 parts of that triad are right directly in the path of this Chinese balloon.
So I guess I'm curious whether you think they should shoot it down. I mean, it's just floating there. I mean, it's this is a real question. They've decided not to do that for now. What do you think about that? And I know you also think that China may actually be doing this not just for itself, but for Putin.
Yes. In fact, there is a very robust intelligence sharing relationship between China and Russia. So one of the things that you have to look at when it comes to this is what kind of a diplomatic fiasco it would be if they did shoot it down. There's a potential that it could raise tensions even more. There's a potential, of course, that if you did shoot it down, as Oren pointed out, there would be the possibility of the loss of life on the ground. So these are things that have to be weighed. And if they believe that they can mitigate the collection efforts, and if they can make them relatively meaningless or relatively harmless, then they usually opt to let things like this fly over and let them pass on to their handlers.